I never imagined that a simple trip to the supermarket would change my life. In this story, I'll tell you how an unexpected encounter with a stranger in an ordinary aisle turned into an irresistible attraction that put my marriage at risk. At first, I thought it was just a glance, an insignificant exchange, but that forbidden spark transformed into something much more dangerous. Do you want to know how it all ended? Join me as I reveal how an impulsive decision threatened to destroy everything I love. My marriage to Javier had always been stable. We had been together for 7 years after a long and happy courtship. In the early years, our relationship was filled with laughter and complicity, but over time, routine began to take over. Conversations became predictable, and intimate moments were scarce. Although I still loved Javier, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was missing. There was a spark that was no longer there, an emptiness that gradually became more evident. That afternoon, after a long day of work, I went to the supermarket. I wasn't in the mood for anything special, just wanted to grab a few things for dinner. I walked through the aisles without paying much attention when I saw him. A man stood in front of the cereal shelf, looking slightly confused as if he didn't know what to choose. He was tall, with slightly tousled hair and an easy smile that caught my attention immediately. Unintentionally, our eyes met. He smiled, and instead of looking away, he held my gaze with an intensity that sent a thrill through my stomach. For a moment, I stood still, trapped in his eyes. It was just a few seconds, but it felt like time had stopped. Finally, he took a step towards me, breaking the silence in a way I didn't expect. "Excuse me, which of these cereals do you like the most?" "I'm completely lost here," he said with a light laugh. I couldn't help but smile. His tone was relaxed and friendly, as if we were old friends running into each other in an ordinary aisle. I responded with a joke, and soon we were chatting about the healthiest cereals, as if we were old friends reconnecting. There was something in the way he spoke, in his presence, that made me feel at ease. Something that made the rest of the world disappear for a moment. We talked for a few minutes, and the conversation flowed with unexpected ease. He told me his name was Marco and that he had recently moved to the city for work. There was something in his gaze, in the way he smiled at me, that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. When we finally said goodbye, I realized I didn't want that conversation to end. I continued with my shopping, but I couldn't stop thinking about Marco. What was it about this man that had sparked something in me in just a few minutes? I thought it would all end as a casual encounter, something I would soon forget, but as I approached the register to pay, I saw him again. He was in the same line, waiting. He looked at me and smiled, as if fate had decided we should cross paths once more. When I finished paying, I approached him almost without realizing what I was doing. My feet moved on their own, as if a part of me didn't want to let the opportunity to keep talking slip away. We started chatting again, and before I knew it, Marco suggested we grab a coffee at the small cafe in the supermarket. Something inside me told me I should say no, that I should go home, but the temptation was too strong. I accepted, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement that I hadn't felt in a long time. We sat at a secluded table, and as we sipped our coffee, the conversation grew more intimate. Marco asked me about my life, my dreams, and for some reason, I shared more than I should have. There was something in the way he listened to me, a connection I couldn't explain, as if he were looking deep inside me. His eyes never left mine, and with every passing minute, I felt the tension between us grow. At one point, he looked at me with an intensity that took my breath away, and without warning, he took my hand across the table. A shiver ran through my body. I knew I should pull away, that this shouldn't be happening, but I couldn't. Instead, I stayed there, trapped in his gaze, in the warmth of his hand. My heart raced, and for a moment, I forgot everything else. "I don't know what's happening with you," he said softly, leaning in a little closer. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop. We leaned in towards each other, and in that moment, the world stood still. I don't know how it happened, but our lips met, and in that kiss, I felt a passion I hadn't experienced in ages. It was like lightning, an explosion of emotions that made me lose control. When we separated, reality hit me like a ton of bricks. My mind filled with confusion, guilt, and fear. I knew I had crossed a dangerous line, that I had betrayed Javier in a moment of weakness. I quickly apologized and stood up, feeling my legs tremble. I left the cafe without looking back, my heart racing and my soul shattered. When I got home, I found Javier preparing dinner, oblivious to everything that had happened. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, a mix of shame and regret that consumed me from within. I knew I couldn't confess what I had done. That mistake had to remain buried in the past. I promised myself that I would never again put what we had at risk. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. I avoided going back to the supermarket, fearing I would run into Marco. I knew I had to distance myself from anything that might tempt me to fall again. I focused on my marriage, on reconnecting with Javier, on reclaiming what I had lost in a moment of weakness. That encounter in the supermarket was a painful lesson about how a small decision can have big consequences. I learned that although temptation can be intense and hard to resist, it's not worth risking a relationship built on love and trust. Now, I am more determined than ever to value what I have with Javier, to strengthen our marriage, and to never lose sight of what truly matters in life.